This is going to be the Eurowise 2-inch air suspension HD kit install on an 06 V10 touareg. It's going to be for the front. This is going to be for the ride height links, and then that is going to be for the rear lift. Well, let's see how this ends up. Next step is going to be, once the wheel's off, remove your sway bar link. Mine's already gone. 21 mil for the lower shock. Then you're going to be ready to bolt on the lower strut extensions. And those are going to go like so. One thing I quickly noticed on these brackets, it's going to come with 3 size bolts. One of them is obviously going to be for the bottom hole, and then there's a small one and then a medium-sized one. On these brackets, the upper and lower ones are going to be for the small bolts, and the middle one is going to be the medium-sized bolt. So here it is installed. On the Eurowise instructions, it tells you to make the bolts face outward and put the nuts on the outside on the forward facing ones to keep it from hitting the axle. On this one I decided to do it the nuts facing out on both sides, just so I could keep an eye on and make sure that none of the bolts back out over time or anything like that. Next step is going to be cutting off this aluminum bracket for the subframe to keep it from hitting this. Followed by that, you're going to be loosening the lower pivot bolts for the front to let you pry the bushings down, and it'll let you get the lower shock bolt through the hole. Well, this tab ended up being a little more awkward than I thought it was going to be. I tried with that. I tried with this. Ended up going to a Sawzall, being able to reach in there and chop that tab off. Ended up loosening the upper control arm to maybe get more space. That did not work. Just reaching in there with a Sawzall worked the easiest and fastest. So the last step is going to be taking out the stock air suspension link that was up here. They pop out, and then you pop the new link in its spot. For the rear install, it's hopefully a little easier than the front. You have 4 bolts that hold the cradle. You drop the cradle down, you install the puck, and you put the longer bolts in. And then you also change the air ride sensor. Also, another important thing, just like the front, you want to loosen these, basically all the pivot points, to let the bushings kind of free up in their travel to keep the suspension from binding. That is very, very important to do on these things. So this sucked. Basically you're loosening your pivot bolts, jamming things in here, prying them down until you can fit one of these guys in, bolt it up, and you do the same thing for the other side. And then you install your new ride height levers. All done. Tighten it down, throw the wheels on, and go cry. It's the next morning. One thing I forgot to mention, the lower shock bolt, you want to tighten it with the car on the ground and with load on it. You do not want to tighten it in the air. That could cause binding and failure of the bushing. Hey, this is me in the future. We're going to talk about the rod length. On this side, you can see that the length is a little bit short. You want it to, the lower level arm, you want it to sit in the middle of where the connector plugs into the level sensor. That's going to keep your air suspension happy, and it might keep you from airing out once you see some wheel travel. That's the issue that I had. So hope that helps.